Captain Ta Woo Kim squinted at the blinking red alert message on his ship's dashboard. His maintenance droid, R3X, had finally crossed from "needs repair soon" to "critical malfunction imminent." With a deep sigh, he plotted a course for the nearest space station, Nexus 7, a sprawling hub known for its diverse population and questionable safety standards. "Just perfect," he muttered, massaging the base of his neck, where his cybernetic implants connected to his spine. The pain had been getting worse lately, sharp electrical jolts shooting down his back whenever he moved too quickly. Not that he'd admit that to anyone. The wandering star, his modest cargo hauler, docked with a metallic groan that matched Ta Woo's own as he stood from the pilot's chair. R3X attempted to follow but stumbled, its right leg locking mid-stride. "Come on, you pile of parts," Ta Woo said, helping the droid regain its balance. "Let's find someone who can fix you before you shut down completely." Nexus 7 bustled with activity as merchants from a dozen species hawked their wares in the main concourse. The air smelled of exotic spices, machine oil, and too many bodies in too small a space. Ta Woo pulled up his collar, partly against the smell and partly to hide his face. He'd made enemies during the Proxima War, and old soldiers never truly relaxed in public spaces. His implant tracker showed 3 repair shops on the station. The first had a "closed for maintenance" sign, ironic for a repair shop. The second wanted triple the going rate just to look at R3X. That left only one option, a small shop tucked away in the less trafficked section of the station. "Ryu's Repairs." Ta Woo read from the holographic sign that flickered in multiple languages. Below the name, smaller text announced, "All species, all tech, fair prices." He hesitated at the door. Rumor had it the shop was run by a Seraphian, one of the very aliens humans had fought during the Proxima conflict. 5 years had passed since the peace treaty, but old prejudices died hard. Especially for someone like Ta Woo, who still carried Proxima shrapnel alongside military-grade implants in his body. R3X let out a distressed electronic whine as another system failed, its visual sensors dimming to half power. "Fine," Ta Woo muttered, "but at the first sign of trouble, we're leaving." The door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a workshop that defied the dingy exterior. Clean, well-organized, with tools Ta Woo had only seen in high-end repair facilities back on Earth. And at the center stood a Seraphian woman, her 6 arms moving with practiced precision as she reassembled what looked like a mining droid. Her iridescent skin caught the light as she turned toward the door, 4 of her 6 eyes focusing on Ta Woo, while the other 2 continued monitoring her work. "Welcome," she said, her voice carrying a slight musical quality typical of her species. "I am HFY Ryu." Ta Woo stood frozen in the doorway, fighting years of conditioning that told him Seraphians were the enemy. R3X nudged him forward, breaking his trance. "My droid needs repairs," he said stiffly. "Critical systems failing." HFY set down her tools with 4 hands while her remaining 2 gestured toward a diagnostic station. "Bring it here. I'll take a look." As R3X hobbled forward, Ta Woo noticed how HFY's eyes, all 6 of them, kept darting to his stiff posture, the way he favored his right side, the slight tremor in his left hand. "Your droid isn't the only one needing repairs," she said matter-of-factly, connecting diagnostic cables to R3X's access ports. Ta Woo's hand instinctively went to his sidearm. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Military-grade spinal implants, NK7 model if I'm not mistaken. Discontinued after the war due to metal degradation issues." She didn't look up from her work on R3X. "You're experiencing pain, electrical misfires, possibly numbness in your extremities." "How could you possibly?" "The way you move, the periodic twitch in your neck muscles. And," she paused, tapping a small device on her workbench, "my shop scans all visitors for weapons and tech. Standard security procedure." The diagnostic screen lit up with R3X's schematics. HFY frowned at the results. "Neural processor degradation. Power coupling failures. Mobility system corruption. She looked up at Ta-Wu. What happened to this droid? Same thing that happened to me, Ta-Wu said grudgingly. Proxima happened. The word hung between them, loaded with unspoken history. To his surprise, Ha-Wan simply nodded. I can fix the droid, she said. 300 credits, parts included. That's actually reasonable, Ta-Wu admitted, surprised. I don't overcharge for quality work. Two of her hands were already selecting tools while another pair began disconnecting R3X's damaged components. The droid will take about 5 hours. Your implants, however. I didn't ask about my implants. Ta-Wu cut her off sharply. Ha-Wan continued working, her movements precise and efficient. No, you didn't, but they're killing you all the same. Ta-Wu laughed harshly. Been dying since Proxima. What's new? The difference is you don't have to. She projected a scan onto the wall. His scan, showing his spine, and a corroding metal slowly poisoning his system. 3 weeks, maybe 4 before permanent nerve damage begins. After that, paralysis, organ failure, death. Ta-Wu stared at the image, at the toxic threads spreading outward from his implants. He'd known something was wrong, but seeing it displayed so clinically made it real in a way he couldn't ignore. Why would you help me? He asked quietly. You know what I am. What I did in the war. Ha-Wan's primary eyes met his while her secondary ones remained focused on R3X's repairs. I don't know what you specifically did. I know humans and Seraphians fought. I know many died on both sides. I know we now have peace. She disconnected R3X's neural processor and held it up to the light. And I know that broken things can be fixed if you have the right tools and the will to try. Ta-Wu sank into a nearby chair, the weight of his condition finally hitting him. How much? He asked, resignation in his voice. Let me fix your droid first, Ha-Wan said gently. Then we'll talk about fixing you. Ta-Wu watched with growing respect as Ha-Wan worked on R3X. Her 6 arms moved in perfect harmony, each performing different tasks simultaneously. 2 hands soldered delicate circuits, while another pair replaced worn components, and her final set of hands typed notes into a diagnostic terminal. Your droid's neural processor was operating at 30% capacity, she said without looking up. The overheating damaged several memory banks. Can you recover the data? Ta-Wu asked, leaning forward. R3X contained years of cargo manifests and trading contacts. Losing that information would cost him dearly. Already backing it up. She gestured to a glowing data crystal. I've improved the cooling system while I was at it. Should prevent future degradation. Ta-Wu nodded, then winced as another jolt of pain shot through his spine. He tried to hide his discomfort, but nothing escaped Ha-Wan's multiple eyes. The pain is getting worse, isn't it? She asked, setting down her tools. How long since your last implant maintenance? 3 years, he admitted reluctantly. Maybe 4. Ha-Wan made a clicking sound with her mouth, the Seraphian equivalent of a disapproving sigh. Military-grade implants require yearly calibration at minimum. Not many doctors willing to work on ex-soldiers from Proxima, Ta-Wu said bitterly. Especially not affordable ones. And yet you trust me with your droid, she observed, her tone neutral. Despite what humans typically think of Seraphians, before Ta-Wu could respond, R3X powered up, its optical sensors brightening to full capacity for the first time in months. The droid stood smoothly, service humming quietly. No more grinding or stuttering. Diagnostic complete. All systems operational. Performance at 107% of factory specifications. R3X announced, its voice clearer than before. 107. Ta-Wu raised an eyebrow at Ha-Wan. I made some improvements, she said with a modest gesture of her middle arms. No extra charge. R3X turned to face Ta-Wu and tilted its head. Captain, my scans indicate your implant degradation has accelerated by 12% since our last assessment. You had your droid monitoring your condition? Ha-One asked, genuinely surprised. Cheaper than doctors, Ta-Wu muttered. R3X, status report. The droid projected a holographic display of Ta-Wu's spine, showing the implants in alarming detail. Toxicity levels have increased to dangerous parameters. Estimated time to critical system failure, 23 days. That's worse than I thought, Ha-One said quietly, studying the projection. She walked to a secure cabinet and pressed her palm against the scanner. The door slid open, revealing sophisticated medical equipment. What's all that? Ta-Wu asked warily. I wasn't always a mechanic, she replied, selecting a handheld scanner. During the war, I served in medical corps, specialized in cybernetic integration. She held up the scanner. May I? This will give us more detailed information than your droid's basic sensors. After a moment's hesitation, Ta-Wu nodded. Ha-One moved behind him and ran the scanner along his spine. The device emitted a soft blue light as it worked. Remove your jacket, please, she requested. The fabric is interfering with the deeper scans. Ta-Wu complied awkwardly, revealing the metal access ports embedded along his spine. Ha-One's expression remained professional as she continued her examination, but her secondary eyes narrowed slightly, a sign of concern in Seraphians. Well? Ta-Wu asked after several minutes of uncomfortable silence. Instead of answering immediately, Ha-One connected her scanner to a larger display screen. A three-dimensional image of Ta-Wu's internal systems appeared, rotating slowly. The implants glowed an angry red against the blue outline of his body. NK-7 implants were designed for temporary battlefield use, she explained, zooming in on one particularly degraded section. They were never meant for long-term integration. The alloy is breaking down, releasing chromium and nickel compounds into your bloodstream. She pointed to dark tendrils spreading from the implants. These are the toxic pathways. They've already reached your liver and kidneys. The metals are also interfering with your nervous system, causing the pain and electrical misfires. Ta-Wu stared at the image, a cold feeling settling in his stomach. So R3X was right. I've got about 3 weeks. Before permanent damage begins, yes. Ha-One's voice softened. Full system failure would take longer, but you would wish for death long before that happened. Great bedside manner, Ta-Wu said with a harsh laugh. I prefer honesty to false comfort. She shut down the display and faced him directly. There are treatment options, but none of them simple. Let me guess. Expensive treatments that require facilities I can't access with my veteran status. Human facilities, yes. Ha-One hesitated, then added, but there are alternatives. Ta-Wu's eyes narrowed. What kind of alternatives? Seraphian biosynthetic technology. She walked back to her cabinet and retrieved what looked like a small iridescent disc. Our approach to cybernetics evolved differently than human methods. We focus on integration rather than replacement. The disc pulsed with a faint blue light as she placed it on the table between them. This is a neural stabilizer. It would temporarily halt the degradation, giving us time to develop a more permanent solution. Us. Ta-Wu raised an eyebrow. I can help you, Captain Kim, she said firmly. But you need to decide if you can accept help from a Seraphian. Ta-Wu looked from the pulsing disc to R3X, now functioning better than it had in years. Then he glanced back at the medical display showing his slow poisoning. What would this stabilizer do exactly? It attaches to your primary implant access port, she explained, pointing to the largest metal fitting on his exposed spine. Once connected, it releases nanites that contain the toxic spread and begin neutralizing the compounds already in your system. Nanites. Ta-Wu stood abruptly, wincing at the pain the sudden movement caused. You want to put alien tech inside me. The alternative is death, Ha-One stated bluntly, or spending your life savings on human doctors who will likely refuse to treat you anyway. R3X moved to Ta-Wu's side. Captain, my analysis of Seraphian medical literature suggests this approach has a 92% success rate in similar cases. You analyzed. Ta Wu turned to his droid in surprise. When did you do that? While undergoing repairs, R3X replied. Mechanic Ryu granted me access to her medical database to better monitor your condition. Ta Wu shot Ha-Wan an accusatory look. Your droid was concerned about you, she said simply. I merely provided information. Ta Wu paced the small workshop, each step sending fresh waves of pain through his body. Finally, he stopped and turned to face Ha-Wan. How much? He asked. For the stabilizer. Nothing. Nothing is never free, Ta Wu countered. Ha-Wan's four main hands clasped together. A Seraphian gesture of sincerity. Consider it a gesture of post-war reconciliation. The stabilizer buys us time. Nothing more. We can discuss more permanent solutions once you see that my help carries no hidden agenda. Ta Wu studied her for a long moment. Everything he'd been taught about Seraphians during the war warned him to refuse. But the pain in his spine and the toxic death spreading through his body made a compelling counterargument. Fine, he finally said. Install your stabilizer. But at the first sign of anything strange, R3X has orders to get me out of here. Understood. Ha-Wan nodded, already preparing her tools. Please lie face down on the examination table. This will only take a few minutes. As Ta Wu positioned himself on the table, he wondered if he had just made the biggest mistake of his life, or possibly saved it. Ta Wu sat on the edge of the examination table, cautiously rotating his shoulders. The burning pain that had plagued him for years had dulled to a manageable ache. The neural stabilizer Ha-Wan had attached to his spine hummed with a faint vibration. He could feel, but not hear. How does it feel? Ha-Wan asked, monitoring the readings on her diagnostic screen. Better, Ta Wu admitted reluctantly. I can move without wanting to scream. The nanites are containing the toxic spread, she explained, pointing to a visualization of his nervous system. The green areas show where they've neutralized the metal compounds. But this is just temporary. We need a permanent solution. R3X stood nearby, its systems running more smoothly than they had in years. Captain, your vital signs are stabilizing. Toxicity levels have decreased by 12%. Ta Wu nodded, still processing the fact that he was willingly allowing alien technology to work inside his body. 5 years ago, during the height of the Proxima War, the idea would have been unthinkable. Why are you helping me? He asked suddenly. Really? Not that reconciliation nonsense. Proxima was brutal on both sides. Ha-Wan was quiet for a moment, her multiple eyes blinking in sequence, a sign of deep thought among Seraphians. Finally, she pulled up a stool and sat across from him. My brother was stationed at Proxima Base during the final assault, she said, her voice steady but quieter than before. He was a medical officer, non-combat. Ta Wu tensed. He had been part of that assault, a particularly bloody battle that had ultimately led to the peace negotiations. He died treating wounded from both sides. Ha-Wan continued, human and Seraphian alike. His last message to me was about a human soldier with a shattered spine, who he fitted with emergency implants. She looked directly at Ta Wu. NK7 implants. The same model you have. Ta Wu felt his mouth go dry. You think I'm the soldier your brother treated? No, Ha-Wan shook her head. The timing doesn't match. But he saved that soldier's life, even as the base was falling. And then a stray shell hit the medical bay. Her upper hands made a gesture Ta Wu didn't recognize, perhaps a Seraphian sign of mourning. He believed in healing above all else. So when I saw your implants, I thought, perhaps this is how I honor him. The workshop fell silent except for the soft hum of equipment. Ta Wu looked down at his hands, unsure how to respond. The war had left scars on everyone, it seemed. I was a cargo pilot, he finally said. Retrofitted transport ships for troops and supplies. My plane got hit during a drop. When I woke up, I had these implants and a discharge notice. He laughed bitterly. They said the implants would last a lifetime. I guess they didn't specify how long that lifetime would be. Military medicine prioritizes returning soldiers to duty, not long-term health, HFY observed. Both our species share that unfortunate approach. R3X moved closer, its sensors focused on Tau. Captain, your heart rate is elevated. Would you prefer I leave you to speak privately? No, stay, Tau said quickly. Having the droid nearby was oddly comforting. A familiar presence in this strange situation. So what's the permanent solution you mentioned? More Seraphian tech. HFY stood and walked to a sealed compartment in the back of her workshop. After entering a complex code, the door slid open to reveal a storage unit filled with what looked like glowing organic material. This is Seraphian biosynthetic tissue, she explained, removing a small container. Inside, something pulsed with a soft blue light. Unlike your rigid metal implants, this adapts to the host body. It grows with you, repairs itself, and doesn't degrade over time. Tau stared at the container. I've never heard of humans using this technology. Because we don't share it, HFY said simply. After centuries of being harvested for our biological advancements, my people became protective of our medical technology. The peace treaty didn't change that policy. Then why offer it to me? HFY set the container on her workbench. Because I believe my brother was right. Healing should transcend politics and old hatreds. She pressed a button on the container, causing the material inside to shift and form into what looked remarkably like a human spinal column. This would replace your failing implants completely, she explained. It would integrate with your nervous system naturally, without rejection. No more toxicity, no more pain. Tau approached the container cautiously. That's not possible. The integration alone would take months of surgeries. For human medicine, yes. For us, one procedure. She gestured to another room visible through a transparent door. Inside was what appeared to be a medical chamber. My repair shop is just the front. My true specialty is helping those the war left broken, on both sides. Illegally, Tau noted. Technically, yes. She didn't deny it. Does that matter to you? Tau thought about the years of pain, the dismissive doctors, the slowly spreading poison in his body. Not as much as it should. R3X moved to the container, scanning the biosynthetic spine. Analysis indicates compatibility with human neural pathways. This is significantly more advanced than any prosthetic in my database. There's one thing you should know, HFY added. The procedure requires a temporary neural link between us. It's how I guide the integration. You might experience memories. Mine. It's an unavoidable side effect. Tau tensed again. You'll be able to see my memories too. Only surface thoughts related to the implants. The link is focused on physical healing, not mental exploration. She paused. But yes, there will be some sharing of consciousness. Tau walked to the window overlooking the bustling station beyond. Ships arrived and departed in a constant flow, each carrying people with their own stories, their own wars. He thought about spending the rest of his shortened life in pain, or trusting this Seraphian with not just his body but his mind. I need time to think, he finally said. Of course, HFY replied. The stabilizer gives you about 2 weeks before we need to act. But note this. She gestured to R3X. I could have placed tracking devices, monitoring software, or worsen your droid while repairing it. I didn't. Trust must begin somewhere, Captain Kim. Tau nodded slowly. I'll be back tomorrow, with my decision. As he left the shop with R3X following smoothly behind, Tau realized something remarkable. He had walked the entire conversation without once reaching for his back in pain. And that, more than any words, made him think maybe, just maybe, this impossible offer was worth the risk. Tau returned to HFY's shop the next morning, his decision made after a night of restless consideration. R3X followed close behind, moving with newfound precision after its repairs. "I'll do it," Ta Wu announced without preamble as the door slid shut behind him. "Your procedure." The biosynthetic replacement. Haiwan looked up from a delicate circuit board she was repairing, all 6 of her eyes blinking in sequence. "You're certain?" "No," Ta Wu admitted with a tight smile. "But I'm dying anyway. Might as well try something crazy." The Seraphian set aside her work and stood. "It's not crazy. It's just different from what your people know." She gestured toward the medical chamber visible through the transparent door. "We should begin preparations. The procedure will take approximately 6 hours." As they entered the hidden medical section of the shop, Ta Wu was struck by how advanced everything looked. The equipment gleamed with a polished efficiency that put most human medical facilities to shame. "How do you hide all this from station inspectors?" he asked. "I don't hide it. I disguise it." Haiwan pressed a button that caused several machines to transform into what appeared to be standard repair equipment. "Most humans see what they expect to see." She handed him a simple medical gown. "Change into this. The procedure requires access to your entire spine." While Ta Wu changed behind a privacy screen, Haiwan prepared the biosynthetic material, carefully removing it from its container and placing it in a specialized chamber filled with glowing blue fluid. "That will really replace my implants?" Ta Wu asked, emerging in the gown. "Yes, but it does more than replace. It integrates." Haiwan's hands moved in complex patterns over a control panel. "Your body will recognize it as part of itself, not a foreign object." R3X approached the chamber, its sensors scanning the procedure room. "Captain, I have recorded all medical parameters and established a baseline for monitoring your vital signs during the procedure." "Thanks, R3X," Ta Wu said, grateful for the droid's presence. "Keep an eye on things, would you?" "Of course, Captain." Haiwan directed Ta Wu to lie face down on the medical bed at the center of the room. The surface molded to his body, perfectly supporting his spine in its optimal position. "I need to place neural sensors along your spine," she explained, holding up small disc-like devices. "They will map your nervous system for the biosynthesis." As her cool fingers worked efficiently along his back, Ta Wu felt a strange calm replacing his earlier anxiety. "You've done this before. On humans, I mean." "7 times, she replied honestly. "All successful, though each integration is unique." "And the neural link, how exactly does that work?" Haiwan moved into his field of vision, holding what looked like a delicate silver circlet. "This connects our nervous systems temporarily. It allows me to guide the integration process with precision that machines cannot achieve." She placed the circlet on her own head, adjusting it carefully. "The link is shallow for most of the procedure, just enough for me to sense the biosynthetic material as it connects to your neurons. Only during the final integration phase will the connection deepen. That's when the memory sharing happens." Ta Wu asked, tension returning to his voice. "Yes, it typically lasts only minutes, but can feel much longer." She hesitated. "It is intimate. There is no other word for it, but necessary for proper neural mapping." Ta Wu took a deep breath. "Let's just get on with it." Haiwan nodded and placed a second circlet on Ta Wu's head. She then activated a sequence on the main console. The room dimmed slightly as the medical bed illuminated with a soft blue glow. "I'm administering a localized anesthetic now," she said, watching as a mist descended over Ta Wu's exposed back. "You'll remain conscious, but will feel no pain." "Why keep me conscious?" Ta Wu asked, a note of concern in his voice. "The neural pathways must be active for proper integration," she explained. "Don't worry. Many patients report the experience as peaceful, even pleasant." As the anesthetic took effect, Ta Wu felt a curious numbness spread across his body. He could still move, still think clearly, but all sensation from his neck down had vanished. "Beginning extraction of degraded implants," Haiwan announced. Though he couldn't feel it, Taowu knew she was opening the access ports along his spine. R3X moved to a position where Taowu could see it, displaying his vital signs on its chest monitor, a thoughtful gesture that helped calm his racing heart. Implants removed, HFY said after what seemed like only minutes. Beginning biosynthetic insertion. A strange tingling sensation crept up Taowu's spine. Not physical, but somehow more profound, as if his very consciousness was being brushed by something alien yet familiar. "That's the neural link activating," HFY explained, her voice taking on an unusual resonance. "Try to relax. Fighting the connection makes it more difficult." Taiwu closed his eyes and focused on his breathing. The tingling intensified, becoming a warm current flowing through his thoughts. Suddenly, he could feel echoes of sensations that weren't his. 6 limbs moving in precise coordination, multiple perspectives from different eyes, a strange harmony of perception that felt both overwhelming and oddly beautiful. Final integration phase beginning. HFY's voice seemed to come from both outside and inside his mind. The memory sharing will start now. The world dissolved around Taowu. He was standing in a Seraphian medical facility, looking through HFY's eyes as she received news of her brother's death. The grief crashed through him like a physical force, nearly stopping his breath. Then he was seeing Proxima Base through her brother's eyes, treating wounded soldiers, humans, and Seraphians lying side by side, their blood mingling on the floor. The scenes shifted rapidly. HFY studying human medicine secretly, establishing her repair shop as a cover. The first human she treated, a mining worker with failing lung implants. The joy of healing, the fear of discovery, the purpose she found in continuing her brother's work. Simultaneously, he knew she was experiencing his memories. The explosion that shattered his spine, the cold efficiency of military doctors installing his implants, the growing pain as they degraded, the rejection from hospitals that wouldn't treat veterans with his particular service record, his loneliness, his bitterness, his fear. Integration complete. HFY's voice broke through the cascade of shared consciousness. The neural link began to fade, leaving Taowu with a profound sense of loss as their minds separated. As clarity returned, Taowu realized he could feel his body again, but differently. There was no pain, no electrical misfires, just a smooth, natural awareness of his spine and limbs. "How do you feel?" HFY asked, removing the neural circlet from his head. Her voice sounded strained, and Taowu realized the procedure had taken as much from her as it had from him. "I feel." He searched for words as he carefully sat up, marveling at the ease of movement. "Whole." For the first time in years. R3X approached, scanning his body. "Captain, your vital signs are stabilizing. Neural activity patterns indicate successful integration. No signs of rejection or toxicity detected." Taowu looked at HFY, seeing her with new eyes after experiencing her memories. "Thank you seems inadequate." "It is enough," she replied simply, but her expression conveyed understanding that went beyond words. "Rest now. The biosynthetic material will continue to adjust for several days. You'll notice improvements in function as it fully bonds with your nervous system." As Taowu lay back on the bed, he realized something profound had changed within him, something beyond the physical healing. The line between us and them, between human and alien, had blurred in ways he never thought possible. And for the first time since Proxima, he slept without pain. 3 days after the procedure, Taowu stood in his cargo ship's hold, easily lifting a heavy supply crate that would have caused him unbearable pain just a week earlier. He placed it precisely in the storage rack, then stretched his back, a simple movement that now filled him with quiet joy instead of dread. "Captain, your physical capabilities have increased by 67%, R3X noted, monitoring his activities. The biosynthetic implant continues to improve neural connectivity." Taowu nodded, still getting used to the absence of pain. The memories he had shared with HFY during the procedure remained vivid in his mind. He had seen the war through Seraphian eyes, felt their losses, their fear of humans, their struggle to rebuild. It had changed something fundamental in him. A soft chime from the ship's communication system interrupted his thoughts. Cargo hauler Wandering Star. This is Nexus 7 Control. You are cleared for departure in 30 minutes. Confirm readiness. Tao Wu activated the response channel. Wandering Star confirms. Will be ready. He turned to R3X. Run final system checks. I need to make one last stop before we leave. The walk to HFY's shop was different this time. Tao Wu noticed details he had missed before. The subtle accommodations the station had made for different species, the variety of beings going about their lives, the fragile peace that allowed this diverse community to function. The closed sign glowed on HFY's door, but it slid open as he approached. Inside, he found her packing equipment into secure containers. "You're leaving?" he asked, surprised. HFY looked up, all six eyes blinking in sequence. "It's time. I never stay in one place too long. Safer that way." "Because of what you do." It wasn't a question. "Yes." She set down the scanner she was holding. "How are you feeling?" "Like a new man," Tao Wu said with genuine warmth. "I can move without pain. Sleep through the night. I didn't realize how much I'd lost until I got it back." HFY nodded, her upper hands making a gesture of satisfaction. "The integration was exceptional. Your body accepted the biosynthetic material completely." A moment of awkward silence fell between them, two people who had shared the most intimate experience possible, yet remained strangers in many ways. "I came to thank you," Tao Wu finally said, "and to pay you for everything." He held out a credit chip. HFY glanced at it, but didn't take it. "I told you the procedure was free." "Nothing is free." Tao Wu echoed his earlier words, but this time without suspicion. "Let me do this." After a moment's hesitation, she accepted the chip with one of her lower hands. "Thank you." Tao Wu looked around the half-dismantled shop. "Where will you go next?" "I haven't decided. Somewhere with need." "There's need everywhere," Tao Wu said thoughtfully, "especially in the outer colonies, places the medical corps never visit." "Yes, but reaching those places safely is difficult, especially for a Seraphian traveling alone." Tao Wu took a deep breath. What he was about to propose had formed in his mind during the sleepless hours after the procedure, as the shared memory settled into his consciousness. "I have a cargo ship," he said simply, "with plenty of room for a mobile medical facility." HFY went still, all six eyes focused intently on him. "What are you suggesting?" "A partnership." Tao Wu gestured to the equipment she was packing. "I transport legitimate cargo to outer colonies. You set up your medical facility wherever we land. We help those who need it, human, Seraphian, whoever. The authorities think I'm just another bitter war veteran hauling supplies." Tao Wu finished. "No one looks too closely at cargo ships, and I know the routes to avoid inspections." HFY was silent for a long moment, her hands moving through a series of subtle gestures Tao Wu now recognized as Seraphian contemplation. "Why would you do this?" she finally asked. "It puts you at risk." "Because I've seen what you've seen now," he replied, tapping his spine where the biosynthetic implant hummed with life. "And you've seen what I've seen. The war is over, but the healing hasn't even started." The next day, the Wandering Star departed Nexus 7 with 2 passengers instead of 1. The cargo hold had been partially converted into a compact medical facility, with HFY's equipment secured for space travel. Their first stop was a mining colony on Vesta 4, a place notorious for its poor working conditions and inadequate medical care. As they prepared for landing, Tao Wu noticed a tension in HFY's movements. "Nervous?" he asked. "This colony has a history of hostility toward non-humans," she replied. "Especially Seraphians." "I know." Tao Wu checked the sidearm at his hip, a precaution he hadn't abandoned despite his change of heart. "Let me handle it." The landing was smooth, and soon they were setting up a temporary clinic in an unused storage building. Word spread quickly among the miners about the visiting doctor. By midday, a line had formed outside, mostly humans with various injuries and illnesses. The trouble started when a burly miner with a badly burned arm saw HFY. He stopped in the doorway, his face twisting with anger. "What's this?" he spat. "A six-armed freak playing doctor. I'd rather die of infection than let one of them touch me." Before HFY could respond, Ta-Wu stepped between them. "She saved my life when my own people wouldn't help," he said firmly, pulling down his collar to reveal the integration points of his spine. "Now she's here to save yours. You let that thing operate on you." The miner looked disgusted. "I let a gifted surgeon heal me," Ta-Wu corrected. "And I watched her brother die treating human soldiers during the war. So show some respect, or find someone else to fix that arm before gangrene sets in." The miner hesitated, clearly torn between his prejudice and his pain. Finally, he grudgingly stepped forward. "Fine, but I'm watching every move she makes." "Fair enough," Ta-Wu said, stepping aside. HFY treated the burn with remarkable skill, using his Seraphian healing compound that immediately soothed the angry red flesh. By the time she finished, the miner's hostility had faded to reluctant gratitude. Word of the treatment spread through the colony. By evening, the line had doubled, with many miners now specifically asking for the Seraphian doctor. As they worked late into the night, HFY paused beside Ta-Wu. "This was a good idea," she said quietly. "Thank you for standing up for me." "We stood up for each other at Proxima," Ta-Wu replied, the shared memories from the neural link still vivid in his mind. "We just didn't know it then." Outside, the stars shone over the small colony, the same stars that had witnessed their peoples at war, now witnessing something new. A human and a Seraphian working side by side, healing the wounds that still remained. R3X moved between patients, assisting both Ta-Wu and HFY with equal efficiency. Its programming had evolved to support their joint mission, adapting just as Ta-Wu himself had adapted. What had begun as a simple droid repair had transformed into something far more significant, a repair of understanding between two species who had been enemies for too long. And as Ta-Wu watched HFY work, her 6 hands moving with graceful precision to heal a human child's broken arm, he knew they were just getting started.